The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Hello to you, Jamie.
Steve, hello, and happy Monday to you as well.
Yes, it is the pretty much the Jamie Hodge and Steve Gomez show today. Scott, our marketing director, is knee-deep in some really cool stuff, which is the end of the month Trade Ideas California Summit. Some of you may have heard about that. We'll touch more on it. So I'll be running the Master of Ceremonies today, and Jamie will be taking over momentarily. Before I do, let's do the normal polling game that we play here. Just want to find out who is a user of Trade Ideas and who is not. So the first poll question in here.
I hate to interrupt, but do I need to hit the start broadcast button over here?
I already did.
Okay.
Yep. Broadcast is started. And
perfect.
Questions, let me just double check the questions. Can everybody sees and hears us? Hi, good, thank you. Yep, okay. I hit the start broadcast, and as a reminder, the recording is rolling as we speak, so for those that join late or leave early or miss it altogether, we'll have the full hour of recording for you as well on our YouTube channel. Great, thank you for the heads up on my question box. Looks like we're good to go. So let me go ahead and launch that poll as promised. Launch. Are you currently a TI subscriber, or do you not currently have an active subscription and you're just kind of showing up because you heard some really cool things about our product? And as soon as we get a quorum, we're almost there. I like to get about 70% voting, and then we'll release the, there we go, there's a quorum. So let's go ahead and close that poll and share it. So as you can see, it looks like typical 2/3 are active users, 1/3 is not quite ready to make the plunge, but hopefully after today and some more tire kicking and even a promo code for 15% off that we're going to hold until the end of the broadcast, hopefully some of you guys will be current subscribers going forward. So one last question. It's only going to be for the people who do have current Trade Ideas subscription. This one's for you. Do you have the TI Pro, which is the basic standard, or do you have TI Premium, which includes the backtesting, the AI, and price alerts that are shareable as well? And I'll wait for a few more people to vote here. Well, this one's getting kind of interesting, actually. So yeah, of those of you who have the product, I'll just give you a few more seconds here to collect a little bit more data. Wow, pretty cool. Let's go ahead and close that poll and launch it so you can see it. As you can see, the preference is to go for the premium. So those that do have TI Downloadable Pro, the people that are joining us today are primarily all active users on the premium product. Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. So let me hide that poll. And back to Jamie's desktop here. And with that, again, we're being recorded. Please, if you have any questions, you can submit them to the question and answer box. We'll do our best to try and keep up with them during the broadcast, but if you're holding on to a question you really want to get some good answers to, maybe hold that and sit on that question until we get towards the end. And with that, I will let Jamie say hello and take over and walk us through the first few slides.
Hello, hello. Thank you for that introduction, Steve. So just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come hear what we have to say on this Monday. I know your days are busy. Wow, September's already halfway over. Here we are on the 18th, another office hours. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, just a quick disclaimer here to not give the legal team a heart attack. Just want to make sure that everybody in attendance is aware that the information that we share with you is for educational purposes only. It's not a solicitation to buy or sell anything. If you do need investment advice, please seek out a registered person like a registered investment advisor, Series 7 stockbroker, somebody that's licensed to give you investment advice. So everything here today is strictly for educational purposes only. Okay. So in keeping with tradition, before we get started here, just want to make everybody aware of the community that we've designed around the technology And as you can see here, we've got webinars Monday. Used to just be Monday through Thursday with myself and Steve and Andy in the mix on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, folding in Brad and Dan on Wednesdays for the Q&A demo. Change it up a little bit. And then we've recently added the Friday support session, which goes every Friday from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern. Been getting pretty good results from that little guy. People seem to really like it because you can come in there and ask whatever type of question you want regarding TI Pro, with the exception of Brokerage Plus. So if you haven't been taking advantage of that, been unable to get a timely scheduling with your one-on-one, it's always a good alternate. And of course, we always highly recommend taking advantage of your one-on-one training. The sooner the better. Of course, one more little slide here to show how our users have responded to AI, and of course that poll that Steve ran just a minute ago kind of verifies that. You know, we've always been leading the pack as far as the scanner field goes for equities, but since the introduction of Holly the AI, we've seen a dramatic increase in new users. And of course, we're always enhancing that module, just like all of the product. Of course, this is Trade Ideas Brokerage Plus right here on this slide. If you are an Interactive Brokers user, you can connect this to your platform. And it's definitely for advanced users, Adult Swim only, but it will allow you to take strategies that you fabricated using our odds maker backtester that look good from a statistical standpoint and automate those things if you'd like. It also allows for manual trading and a little bit easier to do format. We've made hitting the buy and sell buttons a little bit easier. So if you're an IB user, you might want to check it out. Last note about this product or this add-on is that right now, if you're a premium subscriber, you have access to it. It's currently in beta mode. We don't know when it's going to be actually released yet, but as long as you're a premium subscriber, you will be grandfathered in. Simply put, when this thing comes out of beta and goes into production, there will be an additional fee to have access to it. I haven't pinned it down yet, but it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood right around $1,000. So anybody that's a premium member before that hits, you're grandfathered in, so keep that in mind. All right, on to the itinerary today. As always, I'm going to let Steve take it for the first part, do the market recap here. Pardon me while a jet flies by. Keep that pollution to a minimum. I'm going to let Steve talk about where we've been, where we went today, where we might be going, and of course, Holly recap. We're going to talk about the compare count readings, because what we saw here and what we saw here and what we saw with the market, boy, things are moving around in a very strange way right now, and we'll get more into detail about that. And then I've got a couple of new takes, a new take, I should say, on an old window with a modified volume radar. And then I've constructed another little toy for you guys to take home with you today. I'm calling it REIT Watch, and we'll get into, you know, what exactly that means here in a little bit. So Steve,
Yep.
Let me pass it over to you.
Sure. Red Rover. Send the desktop right over. All right. You should have visual of my screen.
Yep.
Good, good. So let's expand out here. Oh, by the way, somebody was asking about the trade of the week real quickly. Again, that's why this is the stop loss down here. We had a stock trigger today and then pull back, so we're just kind of in the range. So that's why I labeled this level risk, and I label the upside target level reward up in here. So it's too early to jump ship. If you want to, you can, but I've learned in the past that once I've defined my downside risk, I just got to let the trade work for me. And patience is a virtue. Having an open mind is a virtue as well. Speaking of having an open mind, again, 2 weeks in a row, I'm not going to do it again, but I talked a lot about how I was getting extremely bearish back here on the downward volume days, which were basically covered back up by light volume price action. Price action rules everything, right back up into the range. And boy, spiders didn't quite show the whole story today. I'm not going to get too involved here, but we had a gap down on Friday in the SPY, and some people probably wondered why we had that giant gap down in the spiders. Well, every quarter, the SPY ETF, which follows the S&P 500, it does have a dividend, and it has to exclude that dividend every quarter and kind of update the pricing. And so what we have is called an ex-dividend gap down day, where the spiders lost a point or two, but they will eventually get those back and catch back up with the spiders. But today, SPY not showing us a whole lot, just kind of a spinning top right here in the range, and same with the Qs. Nothing to write home about in the triple Qs today. Another spinning top with a red candle, but did not break out of any significant levels, but also didn't do any damage. So, again, the spiders after a rough couple of weeks, and the Qs, and me actually putting the bearish hat on for about 7 or 8 days. Well, the bearish hat's off, and the path of least resistance is still back to going back up again. So open mind, got to have a quick open mind and change on a dime and recognize when you're not correct. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a tough business for you. So the spiders and Qs are similar. However, I did notice something interesting. IWM, which has been floundering for a while, the IWM, again, is the Russell 2000 ETF. So the small cap stuff, 2,000 small caps basically make up this index and ETF. Well, it's just been going back and forth throughout the range. This is obviously a very solid bottom for the IWM, but we were approaching, once again, all-time highs here in the IWM. I'll just mark that up for you. A lot of energy expended, and then we pulled back, had a nice base camp build right where we expected it to. This middle line was another pivot line that's been showing up in the past history of IWM, but then we blew through that, and 6 or 7 days of upward movement and a little bit of a blow off today. But what I'm going to show you, or what I'm going to maybe plant a seed in your mind, is tomorrow and the next day, if IWM takes the baton and runs with it, and tries to become the new leadership level of our market rather than technology and energy and things like that. Keep that in the back of your mind. If IWM breaks out, what does that mean? Well, that means that stocks under $5, stocks under $10, those are going to be your lower cap stocks that make up the Russell 2000. And typically, I don't want to say typically, but a lot of times in late stage rallies, the baton does get passed to the junk stocks or the small cap stocks, depending upon what you want to call them. So it has caught my eye that the IWM is performing extremely well today and heading towards possible all-time highs. So keep an eye on this index. If it does break out, what does that mean? Well, that means tomorrow, if we have some Holly calls that are under $10 or under $5, you may have a little bit of extra knowledge knowing that that may be where the next rotation is taking place into small caps. So please keep that in mind for tomorrow's Holly trades, or even any other scanners that you use, or anything that looks good to you guys tomorrow that might start popping or coming to life on volume that happen to be under $5 or $10. That could be what we're seeing here in the bigger picture of the IWM. And then the Dow itself, well, the Dow made an all-time high today. Energy and financials kind of led the way, and I think that kind of just helped the Dow move into all-time new territories today. So leadership in the Dow, possible leadership coming up in the IWM. But for now, the spiders and the Qs are just kind of wallowing in their own little range here until further notice. But again, the bearish hat is off. The path of least resistance is back up. And again, hopefully for those of you who have been tuning in week after week, you saw the components of starting to get bearish, becoming bearish, and then quickly realizing when it's not time to be bearish. And again, the sooner you can change your mind and flip everything around and have an open mind and not get married to one side or the other because of what your beliefs are, well, your beliefs should come secondary to what the price action is showing us. Trust me, I could share 20 minutes with my beliefs with you guys right now of what's going on in the world, and what's going on in government, and what's going on with negative interest rates and Fed policy and central bank policy, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the price is all that matters. And according to the Dow and the Russell 2000, path of least resistance appears to still be up. So that's what I've got for you guys on the market recap. Any questions or anything you want to add there, Jamie?
No, pretty much spot on. IWM pecking at highs. little uncertainty in the SPY. The Qs, you know, all those technology stocks today look like they were just ready to go gangbusters, and they popped up, but all of them eventually kind of retraced back to that entry signal. So, you know, which is kind of a ever-shifting platform at these levels. You know,
it's a pass the baton. It's like the old Ed Sullivan show, the guy with the sticks and the plates on the top of the sticks, and he's spinning the plates.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden one stick starts to wiggle and the plate starts to wobble. He runs over there and spins that sucker. Well, they walked over, they being the market in general, walked over and rotated and started spinning this IWM plate again. So, I mean, ideally, it's expended a lot of energy to get back up to this orange line level. So maybe in a perfect world, a couple of sideways days like a flag, and then a push through on a strong day. That would be the day to take good notice for the small cap stocks, without a doubt. All right. How do you fix target levels? Not quite sure what you mean by that question, Marguerite. If you want to resubmit that, I'll try and answer it for you. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie's screen. So if you want to grab it, otherwise I'll kick it to you.
I grab it.
I kicked it to you too late.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. All right. So now, Holly recap. And of course, today's one of those days where you're like, well, that's kind of odd. You know, we got IWM packing at highs, kind of leading the pack today. And then we have Holly getting up to a little bit of green early on, whether we're looking at, and you can see my screen again, right, Steve?
Yes, I can see your screen.
So whether it's risk on today, and we can see we got a little green, a little swoon, and a little green, and it looks like business as usual because Holly's been on a hell of a run, ladies and gentlemen, as of late. So to see risk off and or risk on today, both red. Let's see, I think the last day that happened was the day after the big day, which was the 11th, so on the 12th. But other than that, I mean, she's been on such a tear, and I'll just drag this refresh chart kind of over here to give everybody a peek if I can get the sizing right. Hold on one second. All right, so everybody can see, you know, we're still going strong, but as with any system, we are going to have some losing days from time to time. So this little panel right here, my index panel, which is basically just the top list with the major indices on there, you know, we got the Qs slightly red, we got the Dow and the SPY slightly up and throwing some curveballs at us during the day, and then we got the IWM up the most. And, you know, not to repeat what Steve's already covered, but, you know, here we go again. Will we catch and will we go? Maybe. But what I will say before we get into the nitty-gritty of Holly is that if you see some of these smaller strategies starting to spit some things out tomorrow or the next day, and we see that IWM holding the line and camping out up here, well then just be aware of that. Could be the time when they go. Will they go? They've teased us enough already. Maybe this is the time, maybe not. But anyway, so to see Holly get a little bit of green early in the day and then whoosh, it's like a statistical vacuum came into play. Boom, if we were a ship out in the middle of the ocean, boom, right in the middle of the doldrums. Not only is there no wind, but it never came back. So typically with Holly, if we're looking at the trade blotter today, you know, just a lot of red, a lot more red than we're used to seeing. So just a perfect testament to the statistical vacuum that was in play today. And of course, you know, you've heard myself and Steve and Andy talk about gaps and how they tend to affect a statistical model. And then if we kind of rewind the tape and go back to the 11th, what I'd like to point out here before we get into the compare count windows, and we're not really quite done with Holly just yet, but are some things to point out. Okay, so here we are on the 11th, and I just wanted to get this queued up so we could kind of see what happened on the 11th when we do look at those compare count windows. But I mean, there's really, I mean, these panels right here pretty much give the Holly recap. There's really not a whole lot to talk about. You know, this is the only thing with any meat on the bone today. Halliburton call right here. Holly plugs out for 11 cents because her timed hold expires. and we could have pulled a little bit more juice out of it, but to the tune of 33 cents. And then, you know, not a big difference here. Here, we don't see any that got stopped out, you know, by just a little bit that eventually turned and went back, and we could have used as trade arounds. So, you know, just pretty slim pickings for today with Ollie. And, you know, unless anybody has any very specific questions, we're just going to move on to the compare accounts here. And I was just checking out Jay's question here.
Yeah, if you're able to do that, he finds value in that little index. Exactly.
You know, it's probably one of the most highly requested windows out there, and for, you know, it's just nice and simple and gives you the heartbeat, 1 minute volume, 5 and 10. Now just keep in mind, 1 minute volume does not show up in native format in the top list. So when you pull this guy up via the cloud, you're going to notice the 1 minute will probably be missing. And all you have to do is email us at info@trade-ideas.com, and it'll get routed to the right person. We'll pop that formula in there for you. But
yeah, give us your username so we can access your account. We can pop that filter and activate it for you.
Okay, so that little guy is in there under the title Indexes. And then as we talk about these other windows, I'm going to drop those in there as well. Okay, so let's get on to the next point here, and where'd my cheat sheet go? Okay, let's talk about the compare count windows. And I've got these queued up. All right, here we go. All right, so this is just accessing right out of my Twitter feed, 20 minutes in. Compare count windows, and keep in mind, we had the nice little gap up. Nice little gap up from here, opened up here somewhere. But, you know, whether it's Holly or whether it's just trading in general, a lot of the times the gap up, I won't say that it messes things up, but it definitely throws things a little bit off center. So after the first 20 minutes today, I'm looking at my compare count windows, especially on these big caps, which are the ones on the far, you know, the two on the left or right, 64 and 63% green. And then, of course, the smaller caps, mimicking the big caps. So 63% on the companies between 2 and 4 billion, a little bit less of a green bias on the stocks capitalized below 2 billion. So for those of you who already have these windows and are familiar, you know that once you see readings in excess of 60% one way or the other, that's when we start perking our ears up and being really attentive, going, well, today could be a nice continuation day, but it doesn't seal the deal by any means, because as traders we always have to take certain simple things into consideration. So before we get into today's action, I want to retrace a little bit. So here was today's action, and what I'd like to do here is just scroll back to the 11th, which was the gap. Let's see, you're not quite there yet. All right, which was this day, where we had a significant gap up, and then we had huge readings, more to the tune, I believe, of 65% green on that day. And we're looking at the readings 20 minutes in, so right about this candle right here, since we're looking at 15-minute candles right now. But I tell you what, let me just go ahead and flip this over to 5. Now hopefully it didn't. Yes, it did. It took me all the way to the back, so bear with me here while I scroll my mouse wheel furiously. Okay, I don't have my control button pushed.
What's going on over there?
But it's not letting me scroll. It's thinking that my control button's down. See, my control button's not down right now.
If you switch symbols, then come back to that.
But in my defense, I did accidentally dump coffee over my keyboard today, so that could very well be a problem.
I hope not.
Okay, so there we go. It's decided to let me scroll. Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're out of the woods now, buddy. Okay, so here we are looking at the 11th on 5-minute candles, and of course we had the significant gap up, and then 20 minutes in, I'm seeing big readings. I'm thinking to myself, well, the gap up is big, and you know these readings are big, but you know the gap, it's weird. It has weird effects on things. But we always need to wait for a little bit of confirmation. So of course we're looking at these readings here, 20 minutes. The high was previously right there. And then, of course, just about 20 minutes later on, it started pecking at that new high, and then it busted for the first time, right? Well, that gives me confirmation, all right? I see things are big under the hood, but is that energy going to turn in, you know, is it just potential, or will it, you know, eventually become kinetic? And, you know, keying off the indice can help us realize that. Now, let's go all the way back to today, and bear with me while I, once again, furiously scroll my mouse wheel the other way. Okay. And no, come on, guys, work with me here. Okay, I think we're done now. All right. So here we go. Today, once again, with a big gap up, and then we go 5, 10, 15, 20. We get our compare count readings here. Well, what happens? We come up here and we bust a high, and then we just immediately start going lower. So the other day on the 11th, completely different. We went and we tested, we busted out and went higher. Today we went and teased that high and just wicked up, which, you know, once again, what do wicks mean? Buyers couldn't keep it in control here, and boom, it's like getting stuffed with a basketball shot. Boom, face, no good. And then we never saw that high again. So, you know, seeing that, what's that going to do? That's going to tell me, well, you know, the market's not mimicking what these readings are telling me, which when we see these big run-ups, a lot of the time, these compare count windows are just going to be reflective of the big run. You know, what I'll say from my personal experience is, you know, when we don't have as big a, you know, hardly any gap, just a slight gap, and then just a little meandering, that's when we can really kind of dig into these things. And, you know, all that anybody has to do is go back and look at my Twitter feed. And that's really what I've established it for, is for people to see, okay, when these readings are this, a lot of the times this happens, but when we bring in the unknown factor, like the gap, kind of throws things off kilter a little bit. It's kind of like the double zero on the roulette wheel, right? Everybody thinks they got a 50-50 chance going red or black or odd or even. No, double zero's on there. It's the wild card. It's what gives the house the edge, right? So on days where we do have the big gap ups and the strong readings, just keep that in mind. Wait for the indice to tell you, you know, to give you confirmation on how aggressive to be or how quick to take your money. Because a lot of good things came across my upside tickers today. Problem is, good entries in the money, whether in the money 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents or more, but guess what would happen? You didn't take that money, regression back down to the entry level, and then even penetration below that. A lot of the technology stocks, NVIDIA is the perfect case today. Got a great little reading from one of my windows as this nice little staircase, then a flattening out right here. Gives us a nice low risk area. We get a penetration with volume and a move higher and another move higher, but then look, whoosh, you know, and of course the market is going to, everything is going to ebb and flow to the whims of the great magnet that is the SPY. So the SPY kind of put the squash on a lot of these tech stocks today. So, you know, there's always a couple that are going to continue. You know, this one was all over social media today. This came across my tickers as well. What I like to call sour gums. And of course, this one, different story. And of course, there's always these in any market. Once you got that penetration level right there, just off to the races and higher, even into the close. So just wanted to kind of give a little bit of theory behind the compare count windows and the readings today, and how to temper your expectations based on the indexes. And then of course, IWM. What did it actually do today? Well, it put in its highs, came down and tested them again, and then it went. But of course, look what happens. Even it couldn't toe the line today. Eventually, everything falls to the whims of the great magnet. But the interesting thing is it's hovering and closing and even trading after hours right at that break. So it could be interesting moving forward.
I wonder what that big downdraft was in the middle of the day. I never saw anything associated with it, but we saw it in a lot of stocks. We saw it in a lot. There's the S&Ps right there. The Qs were very much pronounced on this midday pullback. It must have just been a sell program or something, because I didn't really see too much in the way of news as to what was going on, but it was definitely.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because you know what? We're going to take the time right now to do a little investigative work here, Steve. What we're going to do is we're going to see how crazy it was in there real quick. And the way we're going to take a peek at that is we're going to go in here and we're going to load a window. That, this is a weird one, because a lot of the times I never watch this window, but there will be times where it serves its purpose. And it would help if I loaded the right window. So stand by. Spy Watcher. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'll tell you what. We could look, I'd say, right as it broke this little level right here, or should we start looking a little bit earlier? Let's just start right here and see what the volume was like. 10:55. So we're just going to pop in here. We're going to take a look at the. All right, so 10:55. So let's just say start at noon, and that'll give us some data to take a gander at here. PM, Jamie. Okay. So once again, just to reiterate, 10:55. All right, well, let's just scroll on down and let's just take a peek here and let's see how that volume was. All right. So this window right here, obviously, Spy Watcher. Anytime the spy breathes or moves a muscle, it's going to tell us what it's doing. And then I've got my good friend, 1 minute volume right here. So if this is the 10:55, that's where the party started, the downside party leading to this little plummet here. So 10:55, 11. Let's look to 11:20 and see if the volume was even accelerating. So right now we can see as all these events are coming through, 100 is normal volume on the 1 minute time frame. You know what? That's pretty pathetic. So now we're in the 11:17 bar. We're in this bar right here, 11:15 to 11:20. And look, one time when it was running down, 1 minute volume gets 63% above normal and kind of plateaus at 92% above normal.
I thought we'd see some more action in there.
Okay. Then when we get to the bottom down here, so all during this area right here, the volume was hardly anything, right? The big volumes didn't start kicking in until this bar right here, 11:20, 11:20, right? Slightly before these little wicks started forming. So during the whole move down, volume wasn't really doing much of anything. When we get to this little capitulation right here, that's when the volume started getting kind of hairy. But the odd thing about it is it stops right here at 11:20. That's right when this bar started. So we had a little bit of flurry of activity here as far as volume goes, and then it never really went above normal after that, not even during this whole period here. Let's see, that's 11. Yeah, we're already looking at 11:54. So some little selling algo kicked in is what my theory is, because typically if you're watching this window and the SPY's breaking down key levels, what's going to give you a pretty good idea it's going to continue is you're going to see that 1 minute volume level usually start cracking 300 and better. And that's typically when things are going to follow through, whether you're watching the SPY or any other stock in this fashion.
Wayne was asking how you actually built that alert, the Spy Watcher. Might be worth showing, because it seems like a neat tool.
Let me put it this way, Wayne. You don't want to have to build it. So just to show you, and I'll drop it in the chat window so you'll have access to it. But it's kind of time consuming because I've actually got two strategies in here. This is a multi-strategy window. So in one strategy, I've just got every bullish alert checked off with no filters, because when we go here, it's only watching the SPY. And then on the other one, just every bearish alert that we have. Threw in a couple of neutrals down here just for giggles. But they're both only looking at the SPY. So yes, this was how I came up with the idea, Spy Watcher, but you can make it whatever type of watcher you might want. You know, maybe it's an NVIDIA watcher or Apple watcher.
Right, but with all those filters and events, you don't want to have it scanning the entire market. You'll go nuts. It's really good for focusing in on one item only.
Yeah, and if you like to, if you're a proficient tape reader, or you know, this is information flow, and you know, hey, that thing that sits between your ears, it's one big massive parallel computer, and it picks up on things. So a lot of the times, keep this in mind. Once I drop this in the panel, and you load it up and start playing around with it, hey, so maybe tomorrow you're in 3 or 4 positions. Duplicate this window, make one for each position that you're in, watch it, see what happens. You know, all it does, it's going to set you up to start, you know, partitioning data and viewing data in a whole different way. It's going to force you to see things that you normally don't pay attention to, and that can be a good thing. So I'll make sure I drop this little guy in there as well. We'll put this back on real time. But interesting experiment that we just did, that most of this had 0 volume. We didn't even get any volume down here to the capitulation. You know, what, you know, in the old days we used to call a washout bounce, where stock's going down, 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 and then it gets down there to that level where it's going to bounce, and then boom, a bunch of volume goes off, and then it never sees that level again. Of course, a little bit different of a market back then, Steve. That was when we could chase the big market orders down and play that game, but that animal does no longer exist. It has been hunted to extinction. Okay, so let me do this real quick just to keep everything in order here. We're going to save and share this out as well. All right, so Spy Watcher is now in there as well. All right, so let's just do a little time check. Looks like we're doing okay here. And of course, next we're going to talk about the modified volume radar. Oops, well, good thing this isn't really that important. But for those of you who attend a regular basis, you know that one of my favorite top lists has been the volume radar. Now what you're seeing here is a modified version of it, because volume radar, the filter criteria was so generic. Basically, in its native format, it was just looking at stocks, say, between $5 and $150, and average daily volume on the 5-day of about 500,000, just trying to keep the riffraff out. And of course, I came up with those years ago. So I'm sitting here looking at my own volume radar here in the session today, which this is not the original. But I'm like, you know, this thing's always so packed. It's easy for me to know what to look at because I've been looking at this thing for so long and how to flip the list around. But for a new user, it might not be so easy. And after watching this one for half the day, I'm like, well, you know what? I think I'm going to keep this version up. I can always get my big one back out if I need it. But this little guy's doing its job for me today. And guess what? It's not all packed with a gazillion stocks. This is what the window looked like about an hour and a half before the close today, 11:30 my time. Let me just make sure I'm looking at that. Yeah. So we're looking at what the list looked like an hour and a half before the close today. And what I've done is I've come in here and just added a few bells and whistles. Now, number one, same piece of advice for the 1-minute volume. It's a custom filter, so if you need it, you'll just have to email us at info@tradeideas.com. We'll pop it into your account, and then you can just easily add it. So instead of just using the customary min-max, I've dropped the average daily volume down to 300,000, and then I've added the following criteria. 1-minute volume has to start kicking at 3 times normal, and 5-minute volume has to already be at 2 times normal. Relative volume, we don't want to go too high, but we want to know it's a good ways above 1. A lot of the times that I've been noticing too, whether it's coming from my turbo family, I've really started paying a lot more attention. I want the 1 and the 5, and I don't want to see a 0.75 relative volume. I want to see a little bit over 1, because a lot of the times they'll get up there and have little spikes, never pushes over 1. So this is just a nice little cushion, right? And then I'm going to make one more modification here because I'm just realizing I forgot to put it in. So I used to use the exclude function and exclude all the reads. We're not going to do that anymore. This is a much favorable way, and the funny thing is it was kind of invented by accident because we use the earnings filter to weed out the ETFs for us. And by adding this guy and saying, got to make or lose a penny a share.
I was just going to add real quick on the relative volume. When I talk to people a lot, they want to crank it up to 2 or 3 really right off the bat, and I'll say, well, you know what? I've seen a lot of really good setups that you might miss if you have a minimum value of 2 or 3 in the relative volume. Just make sure you've got like a 1.2 or a 1.3, at least a baseline of 1. I like to use like 1.5, which is another way of saying 50% more volume for this time of the day. But when you go and crank it up aggressively to 2 and 3, you might miss some things that you otherwise could want to see. So just a little tip there.
Yeah, you're going to be looking back in retrospect going, oh, well, that would have been good, or that would have been good. But relative volume, we try to hit on this a lot. It's very slow to update, right? That's why using it in combination with smaller time frames, that's the way to do it. So you've got the broad take and the smaller takes as well. So 1.3, of course, once you get this window, you can pop in whatever values you want. I'm just saying that this is what I like to see. So I think I've just added that, make sure we added that filter for the earnings, or not earnings, but, well, did I just put it in there and then forget to hit OK?
Yeah, you were doing it while I was talking, so I might have stumped you. I'm sorry.
No worries. OK. No, I got it in there already. It just wasn't showing up. All right, so what have we done? We've dropped the average daily volume. We've added the qualifications on relative volume and the smaller time frames, and now we're going to weed out the ETFs. So this is just a random time I picked so we can go back and look. So during the day, as these stocks ebb and flow with their volumes, you're not going to see a packed list. This is what it looked like an hour and a half before. Every 30 seconds or so, you're going to see it shift around a little bit. You might see stocks drop off, stocks pop on that weren't there before. But a couple of different ways to organize this list. Number one, I've added a little bit of color coding in the custom relative volume here. Just, hey, if it's above 2, it's going to be blue. If it's below 2, it's going to be green. But what I did not have on the old one was the position and lifetime range. So I just sorted by this. So when I see a stock like SkyW, and I'm scrolling through my charts, and I'm like, geez, look at all the energy expenditure it had to get up here. Well, I'm going to have a different opinion on this little guy right here versus, and let's just scroll through here until we see an ideal one, versus something like this. Look, OTEX, maybe it showed up on trend change, maybe it didn't, because well, probably not, because it's not at low enough extremes, right? But interestingly enough, OTEC's been doing a whole lot of volume. Look at the little range that it's built up. I like the fact that these wicks are all to the downside. But the bottom line is this: this is an excellent price alert to put on your radar, right? Whether you trade it today or whether you go ahead and set the price alert, back through this line here, or if you want to use the tops of these guys right here, set up a couple of different price alerts. You just start clicking through. So it's a window that's going to show you a lot of interesting things. Now, whether you hit them right then or whether you save them for later and put them in the cookie jar known as the alert window, just by simply right-clicking and setting that price alert. And of course, we're seeing a 5-minute slice of this pie today. So I just pulled up HYH. Well, interesting. This little guy, lifetime highs. Came up here, capitulated down, looks like it's setting up a nice little base camp. So once again, whether I trade it today or whether I put it in the cookie jar as a price alert, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's the next day. Maybe you envelope them, never hurts. But I think you're going to notice that you're just going to start seeing a lot more opportunities, because during the day, it's just a game. When I've seen these big stretched out bars on the daily, nothing's interesting me. What's going to be next? Is it going to be something interesting? But the bottom line is this: You see a good intraday setup to the up or downside. You see a good daily setup. You know the volume's there on the day. You know you're getting some good patterns. And of course, the one I'm looking for is not showing up. That was a gap. But let's go look at a different time of day. Let's just go ahead and punch it on down to, let's just go back 30 minutes. All right, so a little bit of a change, and we play the same game. Now, position and lifetime range. Extremes are always going to be interesting, and then we can see if they're setting up, if they're close to breaking down. You know, that guy just looks like he's right in the middle. Of course, when you see things like this, more than likely it's going to be a buyout of some type. And then, of course, you're going to get your nice little channel plays here. Ollie setting up nicely up there. We've already seen Sky W. AVAV. Night. Did we see this one already, Steve? Because
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, but this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about right here. You'll scroll through several, you won't see anything good, and then all of a sudden, boom. And we could go through each 5-minute slice here and see different ones of these, right? And, you know, therein lies the value. Whether you're going to trade it right now, whether you're seeing something interesting on the intraday, or whether you're going to make a price alert for it, it should feed you some very interesting things in the weeks and days to come. So enough about that one. Let me go ahead and drop this one in. And keep in mind, it's never going to be populated with more than 100 symbols. That's the max. More than likely, it won't even get there. Now, everything looks crazy on the close for obvious reasons. So let me go ahead and drop this one in.
And when you're finished with that, I want to make a visual to something that I typed earlier on the Spy Watcher. So when you get a chance, if you can go back to the Spy Watcher, it's a great question, and somebody else may have this question, so that's why I'm speaking aloud about it. Jamie's got this thing pointed towards only the SPY. What if you want to point it towards the Qs, or what if you want to point it towards Facebook or any other single stock or ETF for that matter? How would one do that?
Yeah, so no problem. I just pulled it back up. First thing I always like to do, right-click, duplicate. Right-click, we go to strategies. We go to each strategy. We go to the green one first. We say configure. All we do is we pop over here, and we go, hey, you are now my Apple Watcher. Then we would go into the red side and repeat. Boom, boom. And then, of course, that doesn't change the title. So lastly, window name, under properties, window name, and then we just changed the symbol, and boom. There you've got a converted window. And then after you do that, it's always a good idea just to come over here and go save it, unless you want to go through those steps all over again. Okay. Now, last on the agenda is another top list. Very simple, all right? This little guy, I'm calling the REIT watch, because we all know the REITs are in trouble. Why did I just type in the word REIT, Steve? I
don't know.
That's what happens when you've been sitting in front of these screens for 20 plus years. You just start typing in what's coming through your mind. So what you're going to see here is a list of 20 REITs. It's pointing to a custom list. The REITs have been beaten down pretty good for a couple of simple reasons. Well, if you're a mall, you've probably noticed a big slack off in business, and there are tons and tons of malls that are abandoned across the United States. The same thing with shopping centers. I mean, we're in the age of Amazon where, hell, where I am, if I place an order right now, I could probably have it here tonight with no extra fee. So the landscape is changing, right? Will brick and mortar ever go away? Probably not. It just takes on different forms, but it's going through quite the tumultuous time right now. So with these REITs, we can see, and by the way, I'll drop the custom list in here, and I'll drop this simple window, but kind of along the same magnitude. We're not going to have any filters because it's just looking at a list of 20 stocks. So we've just got some interesting columns here. Same old, relative volume, where it is in its lifetime. Because when we pull up DDR, it's hovering towards the bottom of its lifetime. It's going to do something, right? It's going to do something eventually. And when these things do move one way or the other, it could get pretty interesting. So whether we see more release and flirting with all-time lows, and then releases to the bottom, because this is a smaller priced one, but we do have some larger priced REITs that either might be impacted because some of these are malls, some of these are shopping centers, but it's all kind of tied together, strip mall, shopping center. You still have to get in your car and go somewhere. So I'm going to closely monitor this sector myself, and I just figured, hey, I bet there's some other people out there who might want to watch this list as well. But just keep in mind, it might be tomorrow, or it might be a month from now, or it could be 3 months from now, or it might never happen. But when the time comes, this can be some quick reference. All you have to do is save it to your cloud, and when that time comes, you'll know where to go to get it. And of course, we still have some that are nowhere near all-time lows. So of course, the range will dictate how much leeway would be in there, and of course, it's all depending on the intraday for our entry, unless we have some clearly defined risk and reward scenarios. So let me do this real quick. I'm going to pop that list into the chat and then drop the window as well. Pardon me while I look over all my windows here. The GoToMeeting really hogs my screens. It likes to stay on top. Sometimes I can't find what I'm looking for, so bear with me here. Let's see, select all, copy, there we go. All right, so first off, here's the list. And also keep in mind when you're watching this list, sometimes some of them might be in play when others are not. We got, all you have to do is sort by that relative volume to see which ones are experiencing the volume with decent relative volume, and then make the smaller time frame comparisons. All right, so here comes that little shell top list. All right, so you guys should have a variety of windows to take home and kick around. We've got the indexes window, we've got the SPY Watcher window, we've got the modified volume radar, which I'm simply calling V2, which should have a lot less stocks, but will ebb and flow as the volume comes in or out of the stocks. And then we've got the custom list of REITs dealing with malls and shopping centers, and a nice little top list to watch those with. So Steve, looks like you've been knocking out the questions as they come in.
Trying, yep.
Doing a little time check here. We got about 5 minutes left, so should we look at a couple of charts before we let everybody get back to their day?
Sure, we got time for maybe 2 or 3 chart requests if somebody's sitting on one.
All right, first come, first served. IMGN. All right, here we are looking at IMGN on the daily. Let me crunch it up a little bit, Steve. I'm sure you're probably looking at it on your screen as well. I don't know. What do you make of that daily here?
Yeah, I'm looking. It's going in the right direction. It's building higher lows. What we have today is filled that gap. So zoom in on your daily, because that's really what I want to focus on. Nice filling of that gap recently with the current action. So I would hope that this level could hold. Even that gradient bar that's showing the trade ideas smart stop in there is there for a reason. There's obviously some pivot levels and some supports down there at that smart stop, call it 650. So I would give this thing 650 to continue to build higher base camps and hopefully keep that trend in line. Doesn't look bad. I mean, I've seen it a million times before. Those were 2 wonderful euphoric days, those green bars after the gap, and then just 9 or 10 days of slop and give it all back. I mean, it happens all the time. This market is 3 steps forward, 2.5 steps back sometimes. So hopefully that'll be the level to really dig in and hold. They could trade below it, but you don't want to see it close below, that's for sure.
Good stuff. Okay, we'll take a pop at AAOY next. And of course, we can see what's going on down here.
Not quite sure what that news is. Short flow to 47%, so it scared the hell out of a lot of people today. Not familiar with the company, like I said, but they must have had some news or even possible earnings. But that could be the beginnings of a short squeeze when you've only got a float of 18 million shares and 47% short. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Today could have been the first shot across the bow. Maybe a day of rest or a doji day tomorrow and a follow day through that, perhaps. Sure.
This little guy, cranked out 6.2 million today, so definitely volume behind it. All right, so of course, Steve, you're familiar with MU already.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Made all-time highs here recently, I believe. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure it's getting close to all-time highs. No, it's not close to all-time highs. All-time highs are way back in the 90s. But in the recent years here, we are coming up on a level at 36.59, and today we hit 35.80. So we're about 60 cents away from some real resistance. If you've got a full load in this thing, there's probably nothing wrong with taking a little bit off as we get. There you go. That's that line I'm looking at as you get towards that heavy level of resistance, and you can bet your bottom dollar there's going to be some supply waiting for sale up there at those levels. But been very pleased with the nice trend that MU has put in place. That one has not been 3 steps forward, 2.5 steps back. That one's been a nice trending trade for sure, but it's getting a bit extended. Probably time to maybe take a little bit off.
All right, and one more here. Let's see, PGNX.
Let me take a look. I like the little wick that it put in 2 days ago. Wait a minute, excuse me, I was on the wrong chart there. Hang on one second. Yeah, shoot, I was way on the wrong chart. Hold on. Wrong time frame is what I meant to say. Okay, again, another nice kind of a gap breakaway there. Not quite sure if that was earnings or news. Not 18% short float, PGNX, pharmaceutical. The only thing I can say is, when you take home pharmaceuticals and biotechs overnight, you got a lot of risk for FDA downside denials and pipeline denials and things like that. So those are typically more of the scarier stocks to take home at night, biotechs. But that's a decent start to the day. It looks like it did it on 3 times normal volume. If I just zoom out just a little bit, it's been building a really nice base. So I would say that prior high, exactly, you got the orange line right on it. That's going to be your pivot level. We broke through it significantly today, but any pullback or give back or a breath the stock wants to take, we probably don't want to see it close back down below that $6.80 level for sure. That's what I would say on that one.
All righty, we're pretty much out of time here. I know we didn't get to a couple. Hopefully we can get to them maybe next time. So, Steve, if you'd like to walk us out here and we can tell everybody who might be tire kicking how they can save a little bit of cash.
Sure. First and foremost, the Trade Ideas podcast is every Friday. This Friday we're going to have Brian Shannon, who's going to be our keynote speaker at the end of the month here in Carlsbad with our physical event. What's the name of the event? Trade Ideas California Summit.
Yeah.
Yes, 2017 Traders Summit, the Holy Grail. So he's going to give a nice intro this Friday on our podcast. If you look for the podcast, you can just Google it, Trade Ideas Podcast. It should be available at most of your app stores, Apple, what have you. So that is that every Friday. Next slide. Thank you for attending. The promo code, as you can see to the right there in orange, is in all capitals, Trade Holly. That's going to give you 15% off your first month or your first year. And I can tell you, if you decide to take that 15% off and you just do it and kick the tires for 1 month, and you're like most people and you really, really like it, Well, if you want to turn it into a 1-year prepay and you're still within 30 days of your initial prepay of your initial subscription using that Trade Holly promo code, we can turn that into a 1-year subscription, 15% off using that same code. So keep that in mind. If you want to reach us, info is the best, info@trade-ideas.com, which is not even on there, but it should be. Myself, Steve at Trade-Ideas, Jamie is J Hodge at Trade-Ideas, but again, info@Trade-Ideas is the best place to start because we can triage your content, your question, and route that to the right person. If it's a Brokerage Plus question, it's going to go to one person. If it's an accounting question, it's going to go to another person. So, with that said, please continue to follow us on Twitter. Jamie does a great job at 20 minutes after the open each day, setting out those compare account windows to help people kind of get a feel for what the day might show. And we're very happy that you all continue to come in and tune in. And anything else, Jamie, you want to add?
I do believe that is it. Let everyone get back to their day. And thanks for attending. And we'll see everybody tomorrow.
See you on the next one. All right, guys. Have a good evening. Recording will be up in a couple hours. Thank you.